Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and we are so glad to have you here. Today, we are talking about legislation aimed at protecting temporary workers, temps, that has many in the business community concerned. Alexis Bailey from the New Jersey Business and Industry Association is standing by. She'll be here to discuss the proposal. First, though, we are turning our attention to the state Senate and the Republican leadership, so let's get to it. Joining me now on New Jersey Politics is Senator Steve Oraho. He is the Republican Senate Minority Leader representing the 24th Legislative District, which takes in parts of Morris, Sussex, and Warren counties. Senator, it's good to see you. Thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, Senator, what are your top legislative priorities at this point in the year?
Well, first of all, we just coming through the pandemic that we had, and hopefully we're getting over that, and the issues that we're dealing with is also, inflation, the top things that are on people's mind, inflation and safety, safe communities. And I think obviously they go hand in hand. And what we've been focused on quite a bit is government overreach. When you look at all the executive orders that were put in place, when you take a look at the, obviously the budget that was put in place and all the kind of the cash flow that was around. When you look at the energy master plan, the regulatory process that it's going through and it's not through the legislature, it's through the regulatory process, and the impact that's going to have on costs for our families, and also the education standards that are out there that parents are hearing about. So, and we'll also always be looking at making New Jersey more competitive and affordable. So those are the things we'll continue to be focused on. But let's face it, inflation and safety are one of the top topics for families today.
Now, you are in the Republican minority. Democrats have control in Trenton. So these topics, they seem like that they would be nonpartisan. How are you finding this legislative session going so far? Are your colleagues on the other side of the aisle supportive in some of the priorities that you're putting out? Because affordability is always an issue in New Jersey.
It is.
And safety, of course.
It is. And I will tell you, obviously we have a new Senate President, Senator Scutari, and Senator Scutari and I have a very good relationship. We talk all the time, as well as my relationship with the Majority Leader, Senator Ruiz, and the Budget Chair, Senator Sarlo. We do have good relationships. However, when you take a look at the budget plan that we put in place, everybody knows there was a lot of cash flowing around in Trenton. We put together an $8 billion tax restructuring and give it back program. You heard of a give it back, and quite frankly, we would have gotten $1,500 in the pockets of New Jersey, millions of New Jersey families right away. They didn't do it. Mainly, I think they liked a lot of ideas, but the administration certainly didn't. Completely ignored any of those kinds of recommendations. So we can get further into detail on what that those $8 billion of tax restructurings would have entailed, but there were a lot of tax increases that were going through already, and we could have stopped them.
Yeah. Well, do you think that is dead in the water at this point, or will you be able to bring it up this session?
Honestly, we'll keep pushing forward, because there's still a lot of the money that has not been spent. You can look right away at some of the things that we said do right away. Like, for example, adjust New Jersey's individual income tax rates for inflation. The federal government has done that for 40 years. We've never done that in New Jersey. There's an automatic tax increase every year on New Jersey families. The other thing we said is, raise retirement income exclusion in New Jersey to $250,000, so our seniors and grandparents can stay here in New Jersey. The other thing we said is get rid of the corporate business tax surcharge that's supposed to go away in December of 2023. Get rid of it right now. You look across the river in Pennsylvania, they're reducing their corporate business tax, and New Jersey has the highest in the country.
Yeah, and a lot of people are leaving the state. It's becoming unaffordable.
Yeah, very true. So those are plans that we put in place right away, and we gave a 32-page budget plan to the administration and to the majority party. Unfortunately, most of it, obviously fell on deaf ears. But we will keep going and pressing for that, because you just look at the affordability issue. inflation right now is our top issue in the country and in the state. And quite frankly, New Jersey has been at the bottom of the list of affordability for years and years and years.
I want to talk about a bill you recently sponsored that would help provide money from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank to small businesses run by disabled veterans. So could you give us a little bit more insight on to that bill?
Yes, and thank you very much, because it is critically important. We have our veterans who have provided service to our country, and all you just have to do is look around the world to see what's happening in the Ukraine with Russia and the bombardments that's been happening. And quite frankly, a strong military is critically important for us. And we just talk about safe communities. One of the ways of having safe communities is having, obviously very strong military, and also very, good support for our first responders and our law enforcement. But disabled veterans have given, obviously, have sacrificed a lot, and their families. So the idea was, let's make sure that we can give them a helping hand through and help their businesses to succeed.
And where does that stand? Are you getting bipartisan support on this?
Oh, we do have bipartisan support, because Senator Cryan has been he's now the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee, and Senator Cryan and I have spoken on a number of the veteran issues, and yes, we do have bipartisan support, and we're hopeful that it'll get through and get signed by the governor.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up Senator Cryan, because there's a bill currently under review called the Temporary Workers Bill of Rights, and I know Democrat Joe Cryan is sponsoring or behind this bill, and it would add state regulations to the pay and benefits for temporary workers. So those who are in a temp job would be able to get the same amount of pay as the person who holds the permanent job. There are a lot of people in the business community concerned about it. Where do you stand on this bill?
Well, that bill, when it came before us in the Senate, I voted no, and I would continue to vote no, and that's one of the issues that we have with respect to government overreach, right? There are a number of occupations that, quite frankly, they need the kind of flexibility so they can earn some extra income. A lot of these type of positions are somebody for a second job, or somebody wants to earn some extra income. I myself, I'm considered an independent contractor myself, and quite frankly, it affords me greater flexibility than necessarily having an individual employer that I'm responsible to. So I think if a bill like this goes through, I think it ends up giving people less flexibility, and I actually also think it gives them less opportunities, and I think it's just too much government overreach.
Yeah, so it's not the issue of the supporting workers that you have the issue. It's about the government overreach. Let the businesses deal with that. Correct that, man. So I hear you correctly. Yeah. So are there any particular issues? People forget that you get outside the State House. You have constituents who you represent. Anything in your conversations that are coming up that they've raised recently that you're taking a look at?
Oh yeah. Well, you just mentioned the Energy Master Plan, right? And quite frankly, the administration wants to electrify almost everything. And we see what's happening around the world with the cost of energy, or the lack of supply of some of the energy. And we're not saying it's to stop all the industries that are coming with respect to renewable energies and stuff. However, let's make sure that we're doing it in a cost-effective manner. The Energy Master Plan, it's going to take 4 times as expensive to operate some of the appliances, like stoves and water heaters and boilers and stuff like this. And the administration, unfortunately, and we've been calling for it, has not put out what's the capital cost that a family's going to have to put out. And one estimate was that it would cost the average family $40,000 to retrofit a home.
Right. And then of course you have those who own apartment buildings and businesses, and that is an extraordinary. I mean, just getting your AC unit, heating unit repaired can be very expensive.
Very true. And there was an estimate done, and one of the things we've been asking for is to have all the capital cost estimates put out there. And there was a recent estimate done by an outside group that said there's like 10,000 different kinds of schools and commercial buildings and in industrial buildings that, quite frankly, will have to retrofit their boilers at a cost of about $2 million a piece. That's a $20 billion capital investment. So let's be honest about what it's going to take. And I'm not one for banning things, because I think innovation and you take a look at how technology and innovation has helped our economy with productivity and whatnot. You look at what we're doing today. 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been doing this, right? By remote technology. And I think thank God for real smart people with respect to the research and development that they've done and the technology that they come up with, and the pharmaceutical vaccines and stuff that they've come up with. So thank God for, as I said, thank God for smart people.
Right, and these issues a lot of times are a lot more complex. They're very well intended, but when the rubber meets the road is sometimes when it gets complicated. Now, you've recently become the Republican Senate Minority Leader earlier this year, so tell us a little bit about how it's been moving into the leadership role.
Well, it's been interesting. Well, first of all, it's been a lot more around the whole state, going around, and you mentioned the Senate Minority Leader. My goal is to have the Republicans become the majority party, and I think that's a role that's important for me. And as we get out as I go throughout the whole state, working with every county, the county chairs, a very good friend of mine, Assembly Leader John DeMayo. We are a tag team almost around the whole state, and first of all, it's been extremely enjoyable getting to see so many different people, but also getting the message out there that, hey, listen, we need to become the majority party, and therefore some of the plans that we put in place, we can have a lot more influence in getting these kinds of, like the $8 billion tax restructuring program I talked about before, getting more and more of those ideas into so we can make New Jersey more affordable and more competitive.
Senator Orteho, very busy man, so we thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. We'd love to have you back on.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Anytime. Thank you.
Governor Phil Murphy was in Monmouth County this week to tour a school at one of the 27 school districts around the state to receive state funds to expand preschool programs.
These children are among the more than 2,100 3- and 4-year-olds in 27 districts statewide who now have access to free full-day pre-K thanks to the state budget's investment of $26 million in pre-K expansion aid.
This will serve to better prepare them for kindergarten, as well as help to enhance their social and emotional development.
The mayor of West Long Branch joined him for a tour of the Betty McElman Elementary School. While the governor was there, he met with teachers and students and spoke about Phase 1 of the New Jersey Strategic Plan for Preschool Expansion. 27 New Jersey school districts will use state funds to implement full-day preschool programs that have a certified teacher and aide. They will also focus on smaller class sizes and be inclusive for children with special needs. The latest round of preschool funding, $26 million, adds approximately 2,150 preschool seats across the state.
When Governor Murphy made preschool expansion a priority of his administration, it allowed the department to take a giant leap forward in the number of high-quality preschool programs provided to students statewide. This year alone, the governor's budget included an increase of $68 million for preschool, including $40 million for new districts to start free, full-day, high-quality programs.
Today, through our efforts, we have expanded access to free, full-day, high-quality pre-K programming in every single county, and roughly 1 in 3 of New Jersey's estimated 210,000 pre-K eligible students now have a seat waiting for them, paid for by us. Moreover, we are committed to remaining on this path and moving toward our goal of achieving universal access to free, full-day, high-quality pre-K programming for every single young learner in our state.
The governor also introduced the New Jersey Strategic Plan for Preschool Expansion, Phase 1, the Foundation. The state will partner with the National Institute for Early Education Research at Rutgers with the goal of providing preschool to all 3- and 4-year-old children in New Jersey. The first phase of this plan looks at the state's options and explores what needs to be done in terms of funding, finding facilities, and hiring a workforce.
There is still a remaining $14 million in available expansion aid in this very year. The department, under Angelica's leadership, is currently working with those districts who may not have been part of the initial awards to boost their applications so they can get in on the second tranche of funding. Districts that did not apply in the first round but would like to open a program for the second half of the 2023 school year will also have an opportunity to apply for the remaining funds.
Governor Murphy announced $176 million redevelopment plan for Hoboken Terminal. It includes new office and retail space, affordable housing, and improvements to public infrastructure. The new Hoboken Connection project will also bring the city's shuttered ferry terminal back to life.
Over the next several years, Hoboken Connect will support nearly 10,000 construction jobs. And when it is completed, Hoboken Connect will support more than 15,000 permanent jobs. It will provide hundreds of millions of dollars in new revenues for the city and for NJ Transit.
Governor Murphy says the project will not only create thousands of construction jobs while being built, but retail, restaurant, and transit jobs when it's complete. A bill that's currently in the state legislature called the Temporary Workers Bill of Rights would expand the legal rights for temporary workers in the state of New Jersey. Now, the bill was initially passed earlier this year before it was conditionally vetoed by Governor Murphy. Now the bill is making its way through the legislature again, passing the Assembly by a 42-27 vote. But a lot of business owners are opposed to the bill, concerned by the possible issues they say it could cause for temp agencies and employers. Joining me now to give their point of view on the Temporary Workers Bill of Rights is Alexis Bailey. She's the Vice President of Government Affairs for the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. Alexis, thank you so much for coming on today. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, your organization, NJBIA, has opposed this bill, and there's a provision in this bill that really kind of struck me. It would require temp workers to earn the same pay and benefits as their permanent counterpoints. So can you talk a little bit about that provision and why it's problematic?
Yes, that's the most concerning provision from our perspective and our members. So it would require that any temporary worker has to get the same average pay and the average cost of benefits as their equivalent employee counterpart. So as you can imagine, businesses have wide ranges of benefits packages, 401ks, vacation days, what have you. And now these temporary workers would have to receive the cash equivalent, essentially, of the cost of those benefits, which is really going to drive up the cost of using temporary labor and make it very difficult for businesses to hire temporary workers.
Alexis, could you talk a little bit about what defines or why businesses would hire somebody temporary? Is it if somebody goes out on extended medical leave or maternity leave, or is it like something when you're in between employees? Can you give us a definition of temp workers and who they are?
It could really be any of those scenarios. It could also be, during a busy season for warehousing. I know we're going into the holiday season. A lot of businesses in that industry might hire some temporary labor to fill in any gaps that they have. But really, these can be someone, like you said, that's filling in maybe a maternity leave position, something like that, or someone that's just coming in for a month or so to fill in during a busy time of year for business.
Yeah, and now if this were to pass, are you guaranteed that the individual coming in, the temp worker, would have the same qualifications and the same training? Is that one of the issues?
Yes, so there's no guarantee that the temporary worker would have the same, qualifications as their equivalent employee counterpart. And now they'd have to be paid the average rate of compensation of someone that, might have been in a job for a year and has different experience levels for someone that might just be coming in for a very short period of time to fill in a gap for employees.
Yeah. The NJBIA has pointed out the potential for litigation in the event this bill passes. Could you explain a little bit about why that's a concern?
Yes, so there's a private right of action provision included in this legislation. And when we see a private right of action in a lot of these labor bills that move through the legislature, our concern is always that that can lead to open the door for class action lawsuits for even minor paperwork violations that an employer might have. So that's always a big concern for us.
Yeah, and then there's another provision. It's called the 4-hour reporting pay for workers who don't have work at the website that they're asked to do. So can you talk a little bit about the impacts of that particular provision?
Yes, so that provision goes beyond what's currently in statute for workers in other parts of the economy. So there's a typical 1 hour reporting pay for if you show up to work, say you have a snow day, your employer didn't inform you about that. They have to pay you at least for 1 hour for your time of showing up to the workplace. This goes far beyond that with the 4 hours of reporting pay for temporary workers.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about how this will impact the members you represent, the business community, and also how you fear this impacts temp agencies as well?
This legislation really is, we're very concerned that it's going to put a lot of temp agencies out of business in the state of New Jersey. And as a result of that, our third party companies are going to have a hard time finding these temporary workers to fill any gaps that they may have. And we already know that a lot of our members are facing worker shortages already. So being able to rely on temporary work when necessary is really important for the business community. And this legislation is going to jeopardize their ability to do that.
So do you think a lot of businesses wouldn't be able to afford to pay? Because when somebody's out on leave, they're still having to pay that individual their pay, correct? So they're having to pay way more as opposed to like that quick fix.
Absolutely. And you have to take into consideration that now, in addition to paying these equivalent wages and benefits, there's also a fee that's associated with the temporary agency. So this is just really going to make even hiring a temp even more expensive than maybe hiring a full-time employee.
Yeah, well, from the other worker, from the person who is the temp, are there protections now? Because, you don't want to bring somebody into a situation where they're, not getting, fair pay. So is there something in existence now that isn't working or, that made this become an issue?
Absolutely. There's a lot of protections in place right now through current statute, federal and state law. If there's any wage violations, I know that that was a big concern brought up by the sponsor, which we appreciate him really trying to protect these workers. But there's a lot of mechanisms in place already through the Department of Labor. You're able to make a wage violation complaint if someone's experiencing wage theft, improper deductions, what have you. So there are mechanisms in place to protect all workers in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what NJBIA, what work you all are doing in response to this bill? Because you obviously represent many businesses and industry associated in the state of New Jersey.
Right now, our goal, as you kind of laid out, it's in the final stretch, has to go through the Senate. Right now, we're reaching out to as many Senate Democrats as possible to explain to them some of the challenges that we have with this legislation and let them know that we really respect Senator Cryan's goal to protect temporary workers. But this bill, even with the conditional veto, doesn't have enough balance to make it workable for the business community.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of leads to my final question. Is there an issue or topic that NJBIA would be happy with to say, if you address this one thing, then we can move forward, or it could be, we would support it if it was considered again?
A big portion of the bill is making sure that temporary workers are adequately informed about the assignments that they're going to be working on, the amount of pay that they're going to receive, the approximate time that they'll be at those jobs. We're fully supportive of making sure that temporary workers know where they're going to be working and have adequate information and see that in their pay stubs, what have you. So we agree with the sponsor there and are happy to work with him on that end. But some of these benefit provisions that we don't even see in other states that have passed similar legislation are really the concern for us.
Yeah. Alex, Belly, any other final thoughts you wanted to give on this particular topic?
No, that's all. We are going to continue to work it until it passes through the Senate. So hopefully we can find a better compromise on this legislation.
Alexis Bailey of the New Jersey Business and Industry Association, thank you so much for joining me on New Jersey Politics. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next week on New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones, I speak with John Shore, who served as the Director of Communications for Governor Jim Florio. Governor Florio recently passed away at the age of 85. We'll talk about the governor's legacy and get some stories from John's time serving the governor.
he had a lot of respect for the media, and he didn't always get along with them, and they didn't always cover him in ways that it was maybe as nice as it could have been. But he always, part of his belief was participatory democracy and a media that is going to go out there and tell the story and give people the information they need to make up their mind. I remember one time he told me when he was just a kid, this was like in the early 50s, he said, I wanted to read the newspaper to find out about Stalin and his overthrow, and the front page of the Daily News was all about crime in Central Park. And he really wanted people to understand things. And, one of the last times I had lunch with him was around the start of the pandemic, and he told me that he had just reread The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, which is a book that was about that thick. And it really troubled him because he saw a lot of parallels with Trump, and he was very concerned about how things were going. And I went out and read the book, and he was right. And so he was always sharing that his what he learned from history, his belief that if people had the answers, had the information, they could make up their own minds. I think when he was sometimes angry at the press, it was if he felt like they were trying to make up people's minds for them.
And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for watching New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.